Yes, this video is about reptilians. So if you're here, you're either interested in one of the most controversial, the most criticized, Alex Jones has gone apeshit tinfoil hat type theory, or perhaps you're just here to make a meme. I don't know. But truth be told, the whole purpose of this new channel is to create highly controversial topics and make it accessible to the everyday person, and dare I say, perhaps even the academics.
Let the man get high if he wants to get high.
Now, it's possible that you may have seen this video, and I do apologize if that's the case, but 95% of you who are subscribed to this channel have definitely not. So if you do like this video, it's up to you to make that mutually beneficial relationship between me providing content and you consuming highly controversial, crazy topics brought to the mainstream. So without further ado, this is our first episode of the new channel, Strange Horizon. Welcome to Strange Horizons, The Unexplained. This is a new segment, and as the title implies, the segment covers the more mysterious and unexplained happenings on planet Earth. From afar, as Carl Sagan once said, it's just a pale blue dot, surrounded by darkness. But as we approach closer and enter the confines of this blue sphere, a paradise emerges, teeming with life and filled with mysteries yet to be uncovered. So let's get started. Why is the most prolific symbol in human history the dragon? One of the stranger yet not often discussed mysteries in human anthropology, sociology, and even psychology is the fact that almost all cultures in the world depict a dragon or serpentine creature of some kind. Just to give a few examples, the Aborigine Australians have an immortal being in their mythology called the rainbow serpent. The Aztecs have a god called Quetzalcoatl, which in the Nahuatl language translates to feathered serpent. In Greek mythology, there is the Hydra, a serpentine water monster with 9 heads. Interestingly enough, like the immortal rainbow serpent, one of the heads is said to be immortal. They also have the Gorgons, including Medusa, female monsters with venomous snakes for hairs. Outside of Medusa herself, the other 2 sisters are also said to be immortal. And in the early classical art, the Gorgons were portrayed as winged creatures. In Indian Hindu mythology, there are the Nagas, a supernatural being of a semi-divine race, part human, part cobra, which like the Greek Hydra is also associated with water. There are the Vikings. Now, this one isn't hard to figure out since it's physically carved on their boats. But it should be noted that in Norse mythology, there are many dragon figures. Nidhogg is a dragon serpent that gnaws at the roots of the world tree. Scholars of Norse mythology interpret Nidhogg as a malevolent monster, since Nid, the beginning of its name, is associated with a loss of honor. Unlike Norse mythology, the Eastern Chinese dragon is thought to be a benevolent creature, which in their mythology is wise, ambitious, and intelligent. It's a symbol of power and strength and even good luck. Interestingly, the Chinese dragon is the only animal in the Chinese zodiac that is not a real animal. The Japanese dragon may also have been heavily influenced by the Chinese legends, but I should add that like many aforementioned dragons, it is also associated with water. One culture to which the dragon is echoed in almost every aspect of their everyday religious practices is the Tibetans. Their dragon is believed to have the powers of perfect communication and enlightenment. Even the Native American peoples have concepts associated with dragons. For example, the Kalapuya people of Oregon have a creature in their mythology called Amhuluk, which is a horned water dragon that is said to drown people. Really strange that on the opposite side of the world, in Russia, there's a native culture, the Buryats, that resides on the shores of the deepest lake in the world, Lake Baikal. The Buryats, who are ethnically closer to Mongolians than the many fair-skinned Russians, believe that there is a water dragon at the bottom of the lake, like the Kalapuya people, is often the culprit of many drownings. There isn't a continent in the world that does not have a dragon entity, well, with exception of Antarctica, but that's not even to say that they're not present in the Arctic. In fact, even the Inuits, sometimes referred as Eskimos, have a creature called the Qualapalik, a half-human sea monster with slimy green skin that resides underneath the hard, thick ice in the frigid waters of the Arctic and who apparently steals children. With this many examples of serpentine creatures proliferated throughout the world, a simple question emerges. Why? What is going on? How do seemingly unrelated cultures depict sometimes entities with near-identical characteristics often associated with serpents? Whether it's considered a monster or a benevolent, godlike entity, one thing seems to be universal with almost all the cultures. Whatever the dragon is, it seems to be supernatural. Joseph Campbell, an author who believes that most stories have universal elements including archetypes, characters that represent a specific element of the human psychology, discusses that the dragon is perhaps an archetype for fear and greed. He specifically analogizes the act of the dragons often guarding gold and virgins and not being able to make use of either is an element of the subconscious. Campbell believes that dragons are psychologically a binding of oneself to one's own ego and that people are captured in their own dragon cage. Psychologists, by the mere function of their profession, are said to be dragon slayers, the ones who can open up the ego that is trapped within oneself. His perspective is heavily influenced by one of Sigmund Freud's protege, Carl Jung. Despite being one of the most lauded psychologists in the history of the field and by many considered a brilliant mind of his time, Carl Jung was also controversial. He proposed that humans might have a form of psychic abilities, which he termed the collective consciousness. He believed that a part of the human primordial brain associated with our ape ancestry still contained instinctual memories that was branded with fears associated with snakes, which he called the snake archetype. His belief, which seems to be very close to Joseph Campbell's, is that the snake archetype, for example, if it were to appear in a dream, is associated with the unconscious and the person going through a process of healing and resolving psychological issues of trauma from their earlier life. And what is most interesting is that one of the main attributes that Carl Jung discusses as to why he believes in a collective consciousness is the universality of the mythologies throughout the world. And given that the dragon is the most universal symbol in most, if not nearly all mythologies, it is safe to surmise that the presence of the dragon is the X factor that inspired Carl Jung to believe that humans are inherently psychic. In other words, because dragons occurred in almost every culture, Carl Jung's solution to reconcile this mystery was to go inwards, deep inside the makeup of the human mind, and even extending that to the metaphysical concept of the human mind possibly having extrasensory perception. But is there another possibility? Could the universal nature of the dragon, instead of being a psychic internal phenomenon, instead be a phenomenon that was formed from an external, more physical interaction? Given that Carl Jung lived from 1875 to 1961, one scientific fact that he was not privy to is that there are hundreds of millions of Earth-like planets scattered just in this galaxy alone. Something else that only in the last few years is beginning to be accepted by mainstream intellectuals such as Sam Harris is that this planet seems to be visited by unidentified flying objects. And if you're to trust some of the people heading the organizations that collected this data, such as Luis Elizondo, who headed the Pentagon program ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, it appears that these unidentified crafts might indeed be a type of extraterrestrial intelligence. Though people don't know exactly what it means that this intelligence does not seem to be endemic to Earth, it does bring up an interesting question yet to be answered in full. What did the pilots of these crafts look like? One of the most widely accepted descriptions is that of a gray alien, a being that has incredibly large heads, enormous black eyes, and skinny, spindly limbs. Incredibly, this exact description is often seen in human history. The Aborigine Australian Wajinas, these beings that came from what they called dream time, well, look how they look like. The Hopi Indians had a concept of these ant people who apparently helped them survive catastrophic events in the past. And the Vincas, one of the oldest civilizations dated as far back as 8,000 years from Europe, are famous for these strange figurines. And if the Waginas are indeed ancient representation of great aliens, why would the rainbow serpent, a supernatural being, also not be an alien? Now, what is interesting regarding this mystery of the universality of the dragon is that there is one other type of category of aliens that many people, particularly abductees, claim to have witnessed. That being the reptilians. Alien beings that are said to be scaly like a snake or a lizard, which despite having anthropomorphic form is often said to resemble reptiles in other ways, such as the shape of its head. Though the dragon is often associated with having wings, there are figurines in some cultures, such as the Sumerians, that seem to depict a dragon-like figure that more closely resembles to what one would assume when imagining a bipedal reptile alien. These figurines are known as the Ubaid lizard people figurines, which are some of the earliest Sumerian artifacts to ever been on Earth, some dating as far back as 5,500 BC. What is also interesting about the Sumerians is that they were known for having these gods that were termed Anunnaki, which literally translates those who from the heavens descended to Earth. One of these Anunnaki gods, called Enki, was associated with not only water and knowledge as so many other dragons are, but also a snake. Some experts have therefore attributed these Ubaid lizard people as being some of the earliest depictions of the Anunnaki, sky gods who came down to Earth. If there are UFOs, and some of these occupants have reptile features, could this explain the universal nature of dragons? Especially since such intelligences would have been able to travel at a whim's notice to any corner of the world, and possibly influencing the culture it came in contact with. Another interesting fact to consider is that dragons are commonly attributed with intelligence, the ability to fly, coming from other worlds, and simply being supernatural. Are these not attributes that would be apropos to the description of a possible ET alien? If you want to go deeper with this logic, there's also the concept that dragons, as is the case with the Aztec Quetzalcoatl, is often described as the creator of humanity. The true origins of humanity, or at least what allowed Homo sapiens to have brains that evolved so quickly, remains a mystery to many anthropologists and biological psychologists. Though traditionally in taxonomy records, brains take the longest time out of any organ to evolve, oftentimes taking millions of years for meaningful progression to occur, somehow humanity was able to increase the size of their brains by 300 cubic centimeter in a matter of tens of thousands of years, which is a blink of an eye in terms of evolutionary time. If a missing link is a true concept, could this depiction of dragons holding what looks like a DNA-shaped snake help explain how it was that humans evolved so quickly, and simultaneously explain what the Aztecs and many other cultures meant when they said that the dragons created humanity? You see, it's one thing to say that the dragons are common throughout the entire world. It's another to have specific attributes, such as a coiled snake that can be found both in Mesoamerica and in the other side of the world, in China. Though some will find the dragon alien hypothesis to be contentious, there is one other interesting concept to consider. Though Carl Jung's theory attempts to address the universality of dragons in human consciousness, how does this theory fit into the universality of the buildings of the monuments such as pyramids, and how specific elements, including certain architectural traits, are so universal throughout different cultures? Not only are some pyramids theorized to be direct maps of the sky, the Great Pyramid of Giza possibly representing Orion, and Teotihuacan in Mexico possibly representing the solar system, many pyramids and other monuments have often been attributed to the dragon figure itself. One example is the Pyramid of Quetzalcoatl. The Great Ziggurat in Iraq is built in a city of which is said to have been inhabited by the Anunnaki. China's biggest pyramid was supposedly built under the rule of Qi Shi Huang, China's first emperor, who claimed to have been a direct descendant of the dragon's bloodline. The temple of Angkor Wat is guarded by Nagas, and even the few and far in between Native American monuments, like the Serpent Mound, seem to reference the serpentine connection. Academics have always looked inward, deep in the recess of the human mind to attempt to solve the great mystery of why the dragon is the most universal symbol in human history. Is it time that academics rethink this approach and instead try looking outwards? More specifically, above. Well, that is our episode for today. If you enjoyed the show and would like to be notified of future episodes, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell. This planet is a blue oasis floating in a dark, cold, expansive void we call space, and it is littered with mysteries still waiting to be solved.